I'm not sure who's supporting who.
All right, we got most of council, so we will go ahead and jump back into our meeting. We're just coming out of closed session. We have a motion to reconvene into open session.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, do we have a motion to certify the only items on the closed session agenda for what was discussed? So moved. We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, action items. Only one item on our agenda this month. We have our personnel recommendations. We have a motion to approve our personnel recommendations. So moved. We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we have our town council. Mayor Lawson.
All right, we'll call to order the first subcommittee meeting of West Point Town Council. First on our agenda is Town Council joint meeting with West Point School Board.
All right, short and sweet. Next up, presentations. We have our growth and expansion presentation with Mr. Bauer.
Okay, everybody hear me?
May or may not work.
There we go.
Let's put it really close. So, good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, I am Josh Bauer, an architect at Crabtree Workall Associates. Again, I'll try to keep this close. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. So good evening. So we're going to talk a little bit about growth in the town and in the school division. Also talk about some options that we have to address those in the schools themselves. So is everybody ready? Over the next 4 hours, we're going to go through an in-depth. No? So we're going to try to keep this under 30 minutes is what I've been asked to do. So we'll see. I make no promises, but we'll try to do that. So sound fair? All right. So does everybody have these sheets in front of you, or is this only on the screen? Only on the screen. Okay. Okay. So this is a great snapshot of kind of where the town is and has been, and so this looks at everything from diversity index to the population, looking at median age, the average household size. You're looking at owner versus renter, median home value. These are, I said, great statistics to look at for you guys and also to be able to share with others. So what you can see here is that you have been growing at a nice, slow pace. This is really the best. The best condition that you could have is a nice, slow growth. Some folks, some places there's a huge amount of growth or a huge amount of decline, and both of those are challenging to address. How do you address everything from jobs to the grocery store to all those pieces? So you guys have done a great job of having a nice, slow, steady growth over the last several years. So specifically looking at the schools. So this chart that's on the screen shows looking at from 2003-4 all the way through 25 and 26. So what you can see here is you can see the enrollment as it's increasing, decrease. So green is increasing and red is decreasing. And again, what you can see here is a nice, slow, steady growth. Looking at the school division, so in 2003-4, it was 775, and right now they're about 869. Again, these numbers, as Dr. Fraser can certainly attest, the numbers shift, even amongst the school year. They start in September and they're here, and then they go up in October, and then they go back down. It's just the course of the year, but these numbers reflect kind of the average looking at the course of the year. But what you can see here is again a nice, slow, steady growth over the last 20 years. So let's break it down even further. So now let's look at this enrollment by grade. So this is kindergarten through 12th grade. And what you can see here is looking at the residents, the tuition, especially and you see the totals all the way on the right-hand side. So this gives you a good idea of, because we often hear this, how many are residents versus tuition? And this is every school division, not just West Point Public Schools. So again, this is looking at from February. So now we're looking at the students per residential unit. So this question we are asked often is, okay, Josh, we're going to build 30 homes, so there's going to be 800 homes. And here's an example. So in Montgomery County, okay, which is over in the southwest, they have a new development that's coming in that is going to build over 800 units. And of course, they are struggling with what that's going to look like. So what we try to do is we try to look at the amount of students per residential unit, because history is a really good indicator of what's going to happen in the future. So when you look at nationwide is around 0.8 is a national average of the number of children per unit. So how do you have 0.8 per child? You don't. But you have houses that don't have kids, and houses like mine that have 2 children. So when we're looking at West Point specifically, it's around 0.5. Okay, so when we're looking at the houses that so this is on average, you're looking at around 0.5. So if you're looking at building 30 homes, there's a high probability that out of those 30 homes that you may have 15 students that come out of those 30 homes. Again, but it's an average. That's not to be written on stone. So as we look at projection, because that's often the question that we receive is, okay, what can we expect? As we look at development happening and one thing I want to stress is that when you think about projections, there's a couple things. One is new houses. Okay, so you're building 40 new homes, and how much of an impact could that have? But also when you have older folks like me, you guys are all really young, but older folks like me, that when our kids are no longer in school, and we say, okay, we love living, in Virginia, but we're going to retire in Florida. So now we move out of our home and we put up for sale, and a young family moves in. So we also need to think, when we're thinking about growth, is as the population is growing older, maturing, are they leaving now, and now who's moving in? Is it a family moving in? And now you're seeing kind of a return. A good example of this is in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, where they were seeing 10% growth a year, and they're still struggling with it, the amount of growth. And what was happening is that not only were folks moving out, so in the town of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, they had these larger Victorian houses that had 6 or 7, 8 bedrooms in it, and folks were moving out. Well, then developers were coming in and making rentals out of them. So now you actually had 3 families living in what was a family that had no kids in the division. So those are also things to think about as folks are moving out and retiring and moving to other places, and younger families are moving in, now are they bringing children in also? So as we look at the enrollment growth, what you can see here is again, history is a really good indicator, is that we're showing a continued slight increase in growth, looking out through 2031. 2031 is going to be here before we know it. Especially if we're thinking about making any improvements. Improvements don't happen overnight. They often, so it takes time to plan, it takes time to design, it takes time to actually do the construction, and so we want to make sure that we are properly planning. We're dealing with it, working with the school division right now, that we're building 3 brand new elementary schools, and they kind of missed a little bit of a pocket of this one elementary school, and so in March of last year, they were looking at enrollment for the following fall. And next thing you know, they had to put 6 modular classrooms on the outside of that building because there was growth specifically in that area. Without looking at redistricts, because you can't redistrict overnight. So as we're looking at this, we want to make sure that we are properly planning for the future. So looking at elementary, so we're seeing we're projecting a slow increase as it's been shown over the last several years. So the other piece to think about is, okay, so now these students in 25, 26 this year, they're, so example, they're going to go into 5th grade, then they're going to go to the middle school. So they're going to, in a couple of years, they're going to be affecting the middle school and the high school. So that growth is going to continue, in the middle and high school. Your middle and high school has had a little bit more of an interesting increase and decrease over time, which is not uncommon. But what you can see here is that we're projecting it to be a slow increase, similar to what we're showing at the elementary school. So, in short, it says what we're seeing and what we're projecting is a slow, steady increase, over the next 5 to 10 years. It becomes harder after 5 years because at least with 5 years you can see who's being born, and there's more factors on. As we get from the 5 to 10 year mark, it becomes a little bit more difficult to project what increases you could have. The community is changing, as all communities do change, but it is a slow change. It is not a dramatic change. Is what we're seeing. The enrollment growth is consistent with the community growth. At the school, it's a little bit higher. But it is consistent, as we're looking at the number of students versus number of folks in the community. It is stable. It's a nice, stable, slow growth, which is exactly what you want. Rising diversity, also changes. As the population changes. One other factor that we're often looking at is when we're talking about births. Is that while some folks are looking at births being decreased, it's not really decreasing as much as the age of moms and dads when they're having children. When most of us were having children, we were in our early 20s. Now it's often in their early 30s, or even in the late 30s or 40s. So what's happening is that whole timeline is shifting, and that is affecting the numbers. Because when you look at the numbers, you're like, oh my goodness, the folks in their 20s aren't having kids anymore. They are having, they're just having them later. And often, where used to be 3 or 4, now we're having 1 or 2. So the housing growth, also starts to explain a little bit of the growth in enrollment. So again, the community is slowly changing, which is slowly growing. Families with school-age children are moving in, which is a good thing. The percentage of youth of the population remains stable, and diversity is increasing as the population is aging. So again, the good news that we want to share is that everything that you're seeing here is good. The number of parents moving in, so our family moved from Pennsylvania to Virginia in 2015, and one of the number one thing that we focused on when we moved from Pennsylvania here was schools. That's what a young family looks at. Whether you're thinking about having children or you have children, we visited, we interviewed several school divisions before we actually even started looking at houses. And so what you have is you have a fantastic school system where people want to live here, because of the great work that you're doing here. Okay, so I promise to get this to half an hour. Are there any questions on the growth, whether it's of the community or of the student population, before we start talking about some of the ways that we could possibly address this? Anything contrary to what you believe as far as community goes? You live here. I don't have the luxury of living here. I'd like to, but any thoughts or questions before we move on? No? Okay, awesome. So let's talk about addressing some challenges with specifically the elementary school first. And so the school division has done an absolutely fantastic job of maintaining the schools. They've done a really great job. We don't always get to see the care of the facilities group taking care of the facility. We also don't always see the fund agent making sure that the funds are there to be able to take care of the facility. So again, what has been done has been fantastic. Here's the reality. Over time, stuff wears out. The elementary roof was just replaced. This roof is mature in age and starting to get to the point where we need some love on the roof here at the middle high school. So HVAC, lighting, things, certain things are going to over time simply wear out, just like they do in your house. Windows, doors, and the challenge with, as we look at HVAC and lighting and windows and doors, is as these things start to wear out, they start to affect your pocketbook from an electricity standpoint, and from a power standpoint and energy efficiency. So it's not just a matter of the comfort of the students and the teachers, it's also how much it's affecting your power bill. As we all know, we pay our power bill at home, it's getting more and more expensive every single day. So as we're looking at the elementary school, we want to look at two pieces. One is looking to make upgrades of, I said, the HVAC. I said you've done a great job of I said replacing the roof, but the lighting, HVAC. Look at how can we arrange the school to maybe be a little bit more functional, to try to pull the grades together a little bit more, get the littlest legs. If anybody appreciates little legs, it's me. But get the littlest legs to be, to get them closest to the front door, or closest to the admin. Some folks say, no, we want fifth grade closest to the admin because they're the ones that, that deserve to be by the admin. But no, having the littlest ones there is really a positive thing. So from a building standpoint, we want to look at, as we see both the current challenges, with the number of classrooms, the size of the classrooms, the location, and try to do more grade grouping, but then also to make sure that we're planning for the future. What does that look like? And there's two pieces. When we talk about growth, we want to talk about the classrooms, which is a easier add. Adding classrooms is an easier add. The challenge is that we want to make sure the other spaces, the arts, the music, the cafeteria, the gymnasium. We want to make sure that all of those spaces are also adequate for the number of students that we're putting in the building. So as we're looking at the overall building layout, so this is the current front doors right here. So right now your admin and your front door is located right here. Something we want to propose is maybe shifting and putting the front door over on the side of the building. And what that would allow us to do is to create a new car loop and bus loop and be able to get more cars off the street. Does anybody live really close here to the elementary high school, middle high school? No one lives close? You live close. So you must love every day when there's like 75,000 parents because everybody drives now.
I just go a different route.
Oh, you do just go around it? So you guys, anybody else live close?
I'm in it.
You're in it.
Well, no, when I'm dropping off.
So it's interesting because before COVID, we were seeing an increase in the amount of parent drop-off. Everybody agree with that? We're seeing, and then COVID happened, and everybody wanted to drop their child off. And so where we used to see maybe 30 cars, now we're seeing 200 cars. And so as we're looking at improvements, we want to try to make improvements for the parents, try to get them in and out, but also for the people that live in the neighborhood, that that we're not blocking the road every single day, both in the morning and the afternoon. So the red line here represents where the existing building is versus the addition. And what we're doing is we're proposing to put a addition on this Chelsea Drive, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It's a little blurry on anymore. So Chelsea, on the Chelsea Drive side, so that way the car and bus route would be off of Chelsea Drive. So in this case, we'd actually move the administration. So the admin, nurse, and guidance would be here, along with pre-KK. I say putting the littlest legs by the front door, keeping the existing gymnasium, and maybe expanding that a little bit with the stage. How wonderful would it be to have a stage and growing the gym just a little bit so it can be closer to more of a court layout than what the current facility is. Having some small group spaces, and then really with this, what this does for us is allows us to have as much team teaching. Okay, so the kindergartens are together, first grade is together. All those groupings are together, so we have pre-KK, and then second, third, and then putting fourth and fifth over here allows us to grow the music and art, and also the cafeteria. So the cafeteria, both the dining and also the kitchen itself, can grow to be able to accommodate the number of students that we both have and the ones that we're growing in the future. So with this, this does address both the current needs, which are both the challenges of trying to get the groups to get the grades together, getting a closer to size, so we don't have one classroom that is 700 square feet and another one that's 1,100 square feet, because there is a little bit of disparity that we're currently experiencing with some of the classes, just because that was how it laid out. So this is the kind of a proposed plan that we have for this option. So this could be what the new front of the building looks like. So we may or may not be particularly fond of the entrance of the building. Does everybody like the entrance of the building? No, you don't like it? Anybody like it? Okay, well, if you don't like it, it's definitely my idea. But if you really like it, it was somebody else's. So, but this kind of, similar to what is on the other side of the street, it allows us to. Listen, the big thing here is that from a car and bus drop off, this gets a central location for everybody to be able to enter. So as we're looking at costs, we were looking at two different options. Okay, so option A would be to do an addition that we just proposed. This is to create the classrooms, a new administration, and to do a limited renovation. Okay, so this is basically just giving some low paint, and your basics for a proposed cost of around $28 million, and that is total project cost. But we give costs. Okay, we want to make sure that it's the total project cost, not just construction. So this includes all of your permitting costs, your design fees, contingency, furniture, all of those pieces. So what we're proposing is basically two different options. One of them is option A, which is an addition and a limited renovation, making select improvements. And then option B, which is a addition and comprehensive renovation, where every single space in the building is improved. New lighting, new HVAC, new paint, new technology. All of those pieces are in option B. So we're looking at limited, versus a full renovation, of the building. It's interesting when going through a building that has an addition that is in 2026, and you step through the threshold and you're in 1926. Because the building does not get, the existing building doesn't get renovated, and you start to feel that. What we also want to try to do is create as much equalness of the building, where the new classrooms, they don't feel any different than the older classrooms. So again, that's why we're trying to propose two different ways to think about this. One that is almost half the cost of the full comprehensive renovation with the addition. Okay. Any questions on this? Yes, sir.
Question, let's say you did the renovation and you changed the front from Thompson Avenue to Chelsea Road. How long would that construction take?
That's a great question. So the addition typically takes around 12 months, this size.
Second question, what do we do about classrooms in the meantime?
That's a great question. So the addition, so we're going to keep the building exactly where it's at, and the addition can happen. The addition can happen without modifying, because again, that's going to be additional classrooms. So here's what we would typically recommend, is mapping this out. So we go to, example, which is not realistic. Okay, but say we went out to bid and we started construction in 27. Okay, so say we started in March of 27. So what we would do is we would start building the addition while the existing building is operational. Okay, that's not going to change anything in the existing building. Over summer one, so summer one of 27, we would come in and do as much renovation as we possibly could. Okay, I said 12 months, so now we're wrapping up the addition in March of 28. Okay, so what we can do then is move a handful of classrooms over, and then over summer two, we would finish up the renovation. Okay, so basically we would do summer one, move students over when the addition is complete, and then over summer two. So we're trying to look at a total of 12 to 18 months for the entire construction, without having to put modular classrooms out there or to have to relocate them other than one time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are those costs built into your option A, option B costs? The moving the kids around, or?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So when we think about it, we think about the cost of what is the overall timeline for construction, and we're gonna use this on what is our best plan. Now, if the plan changes and we have to go to a different path, that would obviously be discussed. But this is based off of the most efficient plan of trying to maximize 2 summers, and that is both for the elementary and for the middle high school. We do the same thing, is to try to is construct the addition, with summer one, we renovate, renovate as much as possible. If we move students over, to the addition, then we can renovate more classrooms and be able to get everything knocked out by the end of the second summer. So looking at sitting from 12 to 18 months of total construction for the project. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. Any other questions on the elementary?
How many additional classrooms would this account for, or extra space for students would this account for?
So we're showing 9 additional classrooms. Now, when asking the number of students, it really comes back to the division on the age of the students. So, example, what we're showing here is these are pre-K, K, 1 and 2. Pre-K, K and 1 is that we're showing the addition. So typically, you would have a lower number of students or a lesser number of students in that grade grouping. Often it's anywhere from 18 to 22 for the younger students, and then as they get older, they can jump to 23, 24, 25. For 2, 3, 4, 5. So, but that's a division policy decision, not an us decision on the number of students. So if we were building 4th and 5th grade classrooms, the number would be higher. But this is what this is what we're looking to increase is on the lower age student side because of the admin.
Well, so and looking at your previous slides with the estimates, it's about 100 extra students over the next 5 years. Is this going to cover more than those 100 students, or is this going to put us at where that would be an appropriate size school for those 100 students?
So this would be a little bit in excess of the 100 students. So, and here's why, is that the challenge is that, so if this takes 3 years for us to do this, what's going to happen is that we're now starting at the 3-year mark, and if you continue to grow, then at this point we don't see any time, then what's going to happen is that in the 10-year mark, you're now going to have to go over this and have this same conversation again. So, so again, the plan here is to create. So we're looking at 4 deep, going across the grades, not including pre-K. So that means 4 classes per grade.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, sir.
Just to confirm, when you say 9 additional classrooms, that's a net of 9, you're not taking them away somewhere else?
That is correct, yes, thank you. Yes, we're looking, so what we're doing here is just shifting other classes around. Yes, it would be a net 9 of classrooms. Okay, any other questions on elementary, Nathan? We can always go back. I'm here all night. Okay. So before we hop off of elementary, there's other ways that we are also looking to address the current challenges that the school division has, and one of them is with modulars. So these are modular classrooms that can be brought in and constructed and either be connected, or be adjacent to the building. The challenge with modulars is most code officials don't want us to have them any closer than 30 feet away from the building. So typically we put a covered route, covered walkway to them. Some municipalities don't really think that they are attractive. So what we're showing here is two different. So we're looking at about $500,000 to $600,000 roughly to bring 6 modular classrooms, to bring a unit with six classrooms in and toilet rooms. So, because again, as we're looking at increasing the number of classrooms, we also want to make sure we have potties that go along with it. Potties are kind of my thing. If you've heard me talk, I talk about them all the time because everybody goes. Right? I know this. Anybody online? Thank you for attending. But what we recommend. So if it was a desire of the town to make them more aesthetically attractive, we could be looking at adding brick, around the facade of that building. So I'm showing cost to add brick. I'm also showing cost to put a covered walkway, because by code, we don't have to have an actual covered walkway. But it's really nice to be able to go from back, to go from the classroom, to be able to come, back into the building for gym, for art, to not have to walk and put your rain jacket on. For many years, in the 60s and, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Virginia loved doing campus schools. And I spent a lot of my career uncampusing the campus schools and making them one building. So with these options, we're showing us a covered walkway and also adding vertical to the modular. So on this drawing, I'm showing option 1, 2, and 3. That's not three different places. There's 3 different places to put them. So as we're looking at the addition, and say, okay, Josh, let's put the modulars out to solve today's problems while we're designing and while we're doing construction. Awesome. So if that's the case, then this option would not work. Option number 2 would not be a good option because that's where we're going to put the addition. Now we could put it up here, that would be outside of there, or we could put it here. So again, we're just trying to show different locations where the modulars could be to make them A, functional for you, but B, also not hinder the ability to do your additions and renovations as you move forward. Does that make sense for everybody? So again, regardless of the location, these numbers, these range numbers are good numbers. We're doing modulars with Stanton City Schools right now. So these numbers are right off the presses from Stanton City. It takes about 12 to 18 weeks. If pre-owned modulars are available, you may be able to get them earlier, but that doesn't mean that they're currently available. So again, from a 12 to 18 week standpoint, typically once you order them, that's when they would arrive. So does that make sense for everybody?
Just to clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a temporary fix.
That is the idea. Yes.
Right, okay. And it's only 6 classrooms.
Correct. Yes, it's
Okay.
only 6. Yes.
Right.
So if there was a desire to say, hey, Josh, we want 9, we would just look at multiple units. But yes, this modulars have a shelf life of around 10 years. So I would highly recommend you to make them a temporary thing. It doesn't mean that they don't become more permanent. We had a school division that had it for about 20 years. They had 17 modular classrooms. There were multiple units that they tied together and had them for almost 20 years. And the contractor, when we did the project, the contractor says, "Hey, Josh, can I have them?" I'm like, as long as they're gone, I don't care what you do with them. So we're like, okay, well, great. What we're going to do is instead of demolishing them and taking them to landfill, we're going to put them, put wheels on them and take them away. And so they raised them up and they put wheels on them, and they almost got across the parking lot, and the walls fell over, and so they went to the junkyard anyway. But it was a good thought. But again, we would typically recommend that modular classrooms are a temporary fix. I said at a school division right now, they're doing it because the enrollment projections kind of miss this area. And what they're doing now is while they're thinking about what that project looks like, they at least have a spot to be able to put the students instead of just shipping them off to a different location. So, okay, any other questions? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the middle high school. Again, a wonderful building. The school division has done a fantastic job of maintaining this building. As we're looking at the pieces of this puzzle, some challenges here are kitchen is maybe a little bit snug. Dining room is, if you've been here when students are here, it's a little snug, for the number. So what it means is that you either can put more bodies in here, which makes it more challenging, or you can have more lunches, which means that you have students that are having lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning, and so they're starving by the end of the day, or they're not eating until 1 o'clock, and they're chewing on their desk, because they're so hungry. As we're looking at the population growing, is something that especially the dining room and kitchen definitely needs to be addressed. That is over here. A couple things that we want to try to address here is not the administration, but the administrative suite. The administration is doing a great job. So I just want to clarify, it's not so the administrative suite they have a fantastic job of having a secure space, a great space for students. there's some improvements that we can make as far as where folks, where folks are sitting, from a receptionist standpoint. The same thing goes with the elementary school. I kind of jumped over that. But with the possibility of looking at this, we can have the administration and the clinic next door to one another, and possibly making the media center, your library, into the guidance suite. So they're across the hall from one another. They're not directly connected. And you're saying, wow, Josh, we've never had it like that before. And that's right. Most divisions didn't used to have, it was all one suite. Here's the thing about your student services, your guidance, is that most students perceive the guidance, the student services as a warming station, as a welcoming place, a place where you can go and you can kind of take your hair down and be able to have a conversation and talk about challenges. Administration, again, this is not a statement about your current administration, but your principal, your vice principals are typically your punishment zone, right? Especially those like me, I was always in the principal zone. So by having them near one another, okay, that if there's a challenge, one can support the other, but there's the comfort area and there's the punishment area. They're kind of two separate areas. And this is really, really working out fantastic for many, many school divisions. We didn't create this, but this is, as I said, we're seeing this to be more and more of a growing trend. So as we're looking at, so your stadium is here, parking lot is down here, and this is your soccer fields, your grass fields here. So what we're looking at here is to add 8 classrooms. Okay, so again, the red line shows the existing building versus the addition. And so we're showing here is to add classrooms, also to add a new full court gym and an auxiliary gym. Okay, so essentially what you would have here is 1, 2, 3 full basketball courts, but in game time you could pull out the bleachers and have this is the main court. Okay, so from a standpoint of every day, from a phys ed standpoint, you would actually have 3 different phys ed stations, in this design. But then also after hours, you've got basketball time. You have boys varsity and JV, and girls varsity and JV. You have all these different folks who want to play. So instead of having to stagger them, at different times, you actually have everybody playing at one time. We're also showing a new locker room, which would be directly adjacent to the main gym. This would be the main gym entrance, for events. So volleyball, basketball, wrestling. This could be the main point of entry for that. And then what we're showing here is, going back to potties, men's and women's toilet rooms and concessions. And by placing them here, okay, so again, your stadium is here. By placing them here, we can have doors both on the inside, so that way when you have an inside event, basketball, volleyball, wrestling, is that they can be open. But if you have a football game, or a soccer game or baseball, is now your doors on the outside can be open and the doors on the inside locked, and now you can have dual function for your women's room and your concessions to really get the most amount of flexibility on this. Converting your existing auxiliary, your main gym into your media center, your library, and additional classrooms. So with this concept, we're looking at, as I said, the additions mostly happening on the stadium side, a little bit here on the cafeteria side, in order to make to both resolve issues with current population, your future population, not only classrooms, but then also for all your ancillary spaces. So a rendering of what this could look like. So just so you know, so if you go in this door and come in the vestibule and come into the main commons, now what you can see here is, it's your gymnasium. This is an opportunity for a student hall of fame. Lots of natural daylight coming into space. And it said this could be the spot where, so when you halftime of basketball game or after the basketball game's over, you actually have a place to collect, and to be there. Also, we talk a lot about sports, but even from the standpoint of student functions, is that there's a function in the gymnasium, and during the school day, there's actually a place to be able to mill, that's more significant. And what a wonderful place to be able to celebrate, achievement. Everything from, from basketball to volleyball to football, this could be all athletics. You can also celebrate band and music and other things in the space. So committed costs. So option A again is a addition and a limited renovation. So just like we had the conversation before, select pieces. Looking at the cafeteria, the media center, the admin, looking at select renovations. With this option A, we're looking at a total cost of around $38 million to be able to do the project here. If we were to look at the addition and then to do a comprehensive renovation and touch every single space in the building, now we're looking closer to $66 million for the cost of that. Because again, this is a much bigger building than your elementary school, and we're looking at making bigger spaces and bigger improvements. So similar conversation with the elementary. What do we do in the meantime? Where could we go with modular classrooms in order to be able to solve the current challenges with their functions? So again, looking at a 6-unit with toilets, we don't have a whole lot of places here to be able to do that. Again, you're looking at, on this side, this is your loading dock for your cafeteria. This is your front door. You take your soccer fields here. So what we would propose is putting them as far over here as possible. Specifically, option 2 would be the one that would be the least obtrusive for the future. And putting, putting covered walkway with the 6 classrooms and the 12 rooms. Option 1 would also work, but option 2 is a better one to not have to worry about where we're going to go with an addition if that's going to happen in the future. Like I said, because I'm trying to keep it with 6 units, or 6 classrooms in the unit, we're looking at the same cost and the same timeline to be able to do this at the high school. So are there any questions on A, the additional renovations, or the modulars at the high school, middle high school?
What would be the anticipated work time, construction time for all of that?
So this is a little bit longer. This is a little bit more of an impact, both from a addition standpoint, this is a larger addition, and from a renovation. This could be anywhere from 24 to 36 months. And a big part of the reason is that this addition alone, so while the elementary addition, it was a handful of classrooms, and the admin, is much smaller, this is a much more substantial addition. So most likely this is going to be around 18 months for this. And because we are full, so if you come to this building during the day, this building is full. And so looking at this, so we're looking at probably 3 summers, not 2 summers. So as I said, we're probably looking at this anywhere from 24 to 36 months, for this view that you're seeing right here. Now, if it's a limited renovation, it'd be a different conversation, but a comprehensive renovation is going to be more moving around. We always try to limit the number of moves. If we can only make 1 move, my amazing wife is a teacher, and so I even more appreciate since she's been doing this. So if Ms. Bauer is in this classroom, I want her to move 1 time, if we possibly can. Sometimes we can't always do that, but the goal would be to renovate or do the addition and move them into their new location, the permanent location, that we don't have to move folks 3 or 4 times. It's just a disruption of education, both for the teacher and for the students.
So with this, we would have to affect students, unlike the last one, where it can be done without affecting students.
So this one, again, we try to move 1 time. So it's just going to be a longer duration, but we would still try to move the classroom just 1 time, so that way we're having as limited impact on the educational and education program as possible.
So correct me if I'm not wrong, we're talking about renovating the classroom ones during summer.
Yes.
And then when they come back in August, that's when
Yes.
okay.
Yep. Or if once the addition is done, then we move on a break. Either the Christmas break or the holiday break, or the summer break, we move them, and then we can, because we have a larger group of new classrooms, we can renovate a larger block of area. And that can help to shrink our overall schedule. As I said, it's between 24 and 36, because until we actually do until you hire an architect who does the design of it, then they would actually do a better job of actually mapping out what that looks like. So it could be 24 months, but it may very well be, I said, 3 summers and be 36 months because of the overall time. Does that make sense? Any other thoughts or questions?
You also don't foresee that this would require us to have, or maybe do, modulars that they have to go into during the school year to do renovations? You see
No,
what I'm saying?
no, I would not plan on
Yeah,
that.
okay.
So
Thank goodness.
what I can control is if you do modular sooner than later. You know,
Right.
So if you have them, let's use them. You don't, you know, so if we're gonna spend the money to bring them on, let's make that part of the overall plan. You know, but if you could do something where you don't have to do them, because again, that's $500,000 that we don't have to spend. Let's not waste the money. You know, so let's make sure on the design side, we do a good job. You know, so that way that we're not spending money foolishly. We, you know, again, we're all taxpayers, and we all want to try to use it as efficiently as possible. Okay, any other thoughts, comments, questions? I didn't do that good of a job. Okay, all right, well, thank you all. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bauer. I guess just kind of to add a little bit to that real quickly, because I know that was a lot of information from town council, but a couple of things that I kind of took away from that I want to make sure we don't completely just skip over is that we are growing, the town is growing. I think these are just base facts that we can all kind of agree on. The town is growing. We're getting at a point where our classroom capacity that we've always been proud of, we're kind of getting to a point where we're maxing out on that. One of the things that we didn't touch on is that tuition has actually been in decline over the last several years. I think we can all acknowledge that there's benefit to having tuition both financially and as well as for the performance of the school, academically, in arts, athletically. I think there's benefit to that I don't want to skip over as well. I think one of the things that we have as a challenge here, and I'm so thankful the town's here, is that that was a lot to take in. There's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of work, and I understand that's very daunting. So one of the things that I'm really appreciative that you're here for is that we need your help from parameters for what next steps looks like. So obviously this is a collaboration, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. We need some input, some guidance, some left and right boundaries, if you will. So Josh has done a great job as far as for kind of dream casting of what we could do with this space. So now we need to figure out what it is that we can actually do with this space. It was a much shorter version. Alrighty. Next up, financial outlook, Mr. Hudgens.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I believe in front of you is a sheet. I've highlighted a couple of slides, or 3 slides, just so that you're on the same page as council. The town had our financial advisors, Davenport, present to us a week ago about where we look financially, what we look like, and especially concerning debt, capacity, and affordability. So I just want to make sure you understand what they do. First part of this is just to look at our current debt profile, just to let you know where debt drops off. Right now, we're paying about $380,000 a year in debt service, and will be through 2033. Next slide, please. And I wanted to highlight from this a difference in debt capacity and affordability. Capacity is like being approved for a mortgage. It's a function of numbers. It's not really taking into account your specific situation and everything else that's going on in your life, the life of the school. Affordability is touching on that. You can't put a hard number on it, but you look at it as part of your budget and look at it as part of the whole. And in our current situation, with our debt capacity, our debt affordability is going to be a more constraining number, just like a mortgage. I wasn't really going to get too much into debt capacity because, again, it's not the realistic number. But even by that, we were looking at about $20 million as a cap on a debt, the size of a bond that we could possibly be approved for. affordability is the next slide. And this is a nice little chart with the cost of debt service for, well, a 20-year loan, a 30-year loan, and then one with a lit loan, which is the lowest. We were told by Davenport, don't plan on getting the nice low 2% lit loan. So we probably score well, we look good for it, but don't base your plans on it. So if we're looking at a 30-year debt, to get $3 million of money to spend on school, we would be looking at needing $200,000 more in revenue to pay for it. If we want a $15 million project, we would need $1 million more in revenue to pay for it. So doing some quick math on if we were looking at just flat numbers of the option A for both of the schools, that added up to about $67 million, which would equate to $4.3 million more in revenue that we would need to pay for it. Which is, if it was only on real estate, which we know it's not just on real estate tax, we'd be looking at across the board things to afford anything. That would be an 85-cent tax increase to pay for option A. And we talked with Davenport about some other just revenue streams that we don't have right now, or one in particular that the state just put in with the sales tax. And that is working. We're gonna have to work with the county on that, and we have been discussing it with them, but it didn't allow the town to move on that all on its own. But let's say that everything moves smoothly with the county, and the county, it goes on a referendum, it goes on the ballot, and let's say the county approves it, and we agree on the mechanics on how we would get money from it. If it works the same as what sales tax, it would be an additional $465,000 we could project in revenue per year. But that's a lot of ifs right now. Not that we don't want to pursue that. We will pursue it, because no matter what we do, we're going to need more for school capital. I can take questions on that, but really, I didn't want to dig too deeply into it. I just wanted to give you a frame of mind of what we were presented with last week.
Can you repeat what you said about the property tax number?
Property tax, if it's for each cent of property tax or real estate tax, we get about $51,000 more in revenue. So if we were to want $4.3 million more in revenue, that would be 85 more cents of real estate tax. If it was just on real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, the situation we're in, we're a town of roughly 3,500 people. A penny in the county gives them a lot more money than 51,000. It doesn't get us as much in the town of West Point, so that's why it's a lot higher rate increase than somewhere else. So, everybody knows we're a very unique school system. We're one of only two that in the Commonwealth of Virginia that is supported by the town alone, don't have county taxes. So raising the money is a little harder for us, per se, than Henrico, James City, even King William, or King Queen. And I think, other localities are going through things, having to build school systems, and the luxury there of low taxes is probably going away for some of them in the near future. So it's just a matter of figuring out what we can do. And I think we discussed before, about a year or so ago, we had the same kind of presentation, and we, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Hudgens and I were there, and Mr. Ragsdale, and we sort of discussed like priorities, like what needs to be done first, and possibly stages of doing things. And the town is changing, and a lot of people say, well, all these new houses, you ought to have more money. Well, not when they have one or two kids. That sort of goes away. Rooftops actually cost money when you have a school system, and that's what people are moving here for. And I understand we've got a slow, steady, increase in student, but I think everybody can sort of figure out it's a direct reflection of their tuition's going down, the town students is going up, they're crossing. So rather than paying tuition, people are just moving to the town nowadays. So the growth there, if we still had the same percentage of tuition students that we used to have along with people moving to town, we'd really be getting chock full right now. So in a lot of the houses that are being purchased are very young families, and they're not even in the school system yet. And I know this because I'm not getting any football players, people moving here. They're all younger ones. The lower grades are what's getting sort of filled up. And like I said, I don't know that if we had reached out or could reach out, there's several preschools. Have they seen the numbers, or do they cap them? Sort of figure out who's here, what's moving in. We did have that subdivision, which is completed, and I thought we did get a little bit of a break on construction, but I asked the building inspector, last month, I was like, you're not getting more houses, I just got 10 this week. So they're still trying to put them in different places, we're just not seeing any subdivision plans, like we had. Of course, the subdivisions that were just completed were approved back in the mid-2000s. They were just never built out. So those are done. We haven't had any new applications for larger scale subdivisions. But that's not to say they won't come. But I think where we're at, next steps, phases, what does the school board want to see? What is your priority list? Does the elementary school need to be addressed first, the high school? I think you sort of can tell by the numbers it's not realistic to do both at the same time. We don't have the capacity to pay for that. I know we want it, but I don't know if y'all paid attention to social media last week, but as soon as everybody got their tax bills, they were screaming, and it was the same as it was the year before. So if you put an 85-cent increase on the real estate tax rate, you can imagine what would happen. None of us will probably be sitting here after the next election. But I think priorities and stages, phases, is what we sort of need to look at, what needs to be done, what can be done quickly, and how it can be done without interfering with the future plans. Just like the options for the modular, you don't want to do something, put something there where you're going to have to expand. And my concern has always been the overall campus, not just the building, but when you're going out, are you taking away practice field? Are you expanding here, that bus terminal, could that be moved? We give you more room there, because you did have a sinkhole there a few years ago. I think that was taken care of, but, well, the town just put over those extra lots to y'all, was that the town where that house was. Would you want to move the bus further out so you could expand there? Different things like that. But the overall campus is sort of my concern about, yeah, we're going to expand, but if we are going to still have sports, where are they going to practice? What are they going to do with that? So, because we don't have more land, unfortunately. We can't go further out unless you want to cross over Thompson, buy some houses, or do something like that. But, just the overall planning stages and priorities, I think, is where we're at.
Real quick, I think we can all probably agree that one of the biggest priorities is obviously capacity. I think anytime we would look to expand capacity in classrooms and how many students we could take, there's going to be ancillary services that have to go to support that. I think that's probably our biggest thing right out of the gate, but having some sort of framework as far as for financial affordability and financial capacity definitely gives us something to work from, as to your point, as far as for priorities list or a wish list. It's kind of like shopping for a car. You can say, I want to go buy a car, and unless you know what your budget is, there's lots of things out there. There's lots of things in the parking lot, got 4 wheels, an engine, and a steering wheel. They don't all cost the same.
Don't buy the Escalade when you can only afford a Tahoe.
There you go. So I think this helps gives us some sort of framework. And to your point regarding athletics and practice fields, Josh's team, any team that's at that caliber is going to incorporate into this exercise a master plan portion of it. So just like you had great questions as relates to the phasing of construction and how the logistics would work for the classrooms, the teachers, moving students, that campus style master plan also addressed where the impacts might be. is, to your point, the coaching staff have to deal with that. They have to deal with it safely, they have to still do their job on a regular day, so that's all just part of that process.
And I know from personal experience that every single preschool in town has a wait list right now. And it's multiple kids deep. And that's every single preschool.
Yeah, I just wonder if numbers from them would
Right,
help.
and we can look into that. Dr. Hauser currently works with all the preschools as we're doing professional development for those preschool teachers, so we can make sure that the students are truly prepared when they come here to West Point. But we can look at those other preschools to see what their numbers are and what the ages of those students are. So if they're serving students as low as 2 years old, then let's then be able to use those numbers as some projections as well. We can do that.
And make sure, I guess, to distinguish if they're only West Point kids
Mhm.
versus there might be outside the area kids going to those preschools.
If we can see what data
Mhm.
we can
And we
access.
can also look at whether they may be, like, I know for my son, one of his best friends lives in Gloucester, and they tried to get a tuition, and they were denied it, because there wasn't enough spots. So, I mean, those students who are still going to West Point preschools may be interested in being tuition students, so.
I have a really crazy question, and this is from the layman in the group. What would it take for y'all, for the town, to be able to give us just a rough number so we can start the process? Because like you said, this is like the second meeting that we've had the same kind of thing, and we've all decided that that's obviously too rich for our blood right now. Like, what would it take? What do you need from us other than a list of what we need? Because that's what this whole thing is about, is what we need. How can we get a number from you, just so we can kind of have a starting point for us, and then we can say, okay, well, we can have $3 million just for, we can afford modulars here, we can afford the new roof here, and we can afford the gym here. Like, without a number, I don't think we can go past this thing meeting next year. And like, we're getting behind the ball on this because there are more students coming in. And I'm only asking this how I know to ask it instead of all the cool technical terms like everybody else is. But like, what do we need to do to get that number from you? And that's not saying that y'all are doing a job. I just want to know, like, how do we get to that point so we can actually start moving forward?
I guess crunching numbers, for one thing, we have an unexpected cost that's coming from us, from a local, we're having to deal with someone about. So that's money that we're not gonna have. Tax-wise, we've got the roof coming up regardless. And if we could have projections on what that's gonna be, so we can add that into the figure, to see how much we'd have to crunch somewhere else. The problem is with the town budget is nothing's getting cheaper for us either. So, you know,
I'm just
every
thinking,
year.
like, is it can y'all take like 6 months and go through those processes, the different things that are occurring, and then in 6 months, we have another meeting, and you're like, okay, we've come up with, at this point, we can only give you $50,000. Okay, well then that's patching a roof and putting one modular outside. Like, we have to have those numbers to be able to move forward. And it sounds like I'm ignorant in this, but I understand that we need a starting point, and because we keep having this one thing meeting, and Mr. Bauer is doing great jobs at giving us all this stuff, but we keep having this meeting, and it's wasting more money in the long run, so we have to move forward.
Well, I mean, I can say I think $67 million is not going to happen.
But that was already said in the last meeting.
Yes,
I
it
think
was.
the point, I think what we were expecting was we were gonna come here today,
Mhm.
because we already had one meeting where we went over the same exact information. We were expecting to come here today and y'all be like, okay, this is what the town can afford and what we're willing to put into the school renovations. Because, yeah, we can come up with priority lists, but again, if we don't know how much money we can actually spend in our priority list.
Well, I
is
think how it works is you
so-
give us a priority and how much it costs, and we see if we can afford it. We work to it, because you know, it's gonna be a tax increase regardless one way or another. But, you know, what need is in dire need? Of course, our roof is in dire need. We all know that, so we can figure that out. We're not getting a whole lot of the only way we can get revenue is raise taxes. So, and a part of it's gonna be what the citizens are comfortable with. I think we're gonna have to go through crunch numbers to see what we can, if you're gonna give more to one service, you're gonna have to cut another service, or you're gonna have to raise taxes. That's all we can really do. Like I said, we're 3,500 people in this town.
Yeah, and I understand, it's a basis of tax, and it's a basis of economics, economic development, there's definitely multiple pieces to it. I mean, just like we just talked about, there's a new sales tax piece to this puzzle that hasn't completely unfolded yet. I think to the other board members' point is that we're not saying, what is that dollar value with a cent tax to it, to that finite nickel, but what is a comfortable, palatable, responsible range that the town, in collaboration with the school, is viable. Now, that's, again, it's not a dollar, but Josh doesn't have a crystal ball either, so he can't, you know, design without having some sort of parameters. So it's just, even if it's something in the next, you know, to Reese's point, the next several months, we need to find a range that's good stewardship but still moving us forward. I think that'd be super helpful.
We'll just have to put that on one of our committees and get staff to start working, crunching numbers and seeing what we could come up with.
Appreciate it.
And the current real estate tax, I think it's 0.56, is that right, Steve?
What's that?
Current real estate tax, 0.56,
Yes.
and that might just help give a little rough numbers, so the 86 would be over double.
Well, that's just a framework, because
Right.
$20 million is, can't go beyond $20 million borrow because of capacity. So what do we think is affordable?
Right.
How many more cents tax do we want to fight for to hit their priorities?
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Sound of crickets, I'll move on to the next thing. Next on our agenda, we just have our upcoming meeting dates. We're meeting next week at 5 o'clock, closed session, 6 o'clock for a regular meeting. If there's nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn our school board meeting? Done. We can hand it over to you guys.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next thing on there is agenda changes. Are there any?
Yep.
Now we'll move on. Citizens Address Council, I don't think we have.